Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Yesshift, and I'm Steven Schinder. My dad Dan had some stuff he needed to take care of, but I'm not alone here. I'm joined by this guy right here, Craig Maher of XOXZeno, and we're gonna talk about the new album which came out I think about a month ago now, Luminous Voyage. So Craig, how's it going?
Great, Stephen. How are you? Everything's good. Yeah.
Great,
Thanks for
great.
being on the show.
Yeah, this is a project that we've been hearing about now and then, and we'd even get questions from uh, followers here and there on our page asking, "Hey, do you know what's up with this XOXZeno thing? Like any news on it?" And then finally, it came out last month, and this is a really good album. I have some speculation about possible influences. We'll get into that. But first off, how did the project come together, and how did you get the involvement of the likes of Patrick Moraz, Jay Shellen, and Billy Sherwood?
Yeah. So, this project has been going on for quite some time. Um, Actually, to tell the story, is it actually started out with some artwork I did for Alan Holsworth, I guess around 4 years ago, maybe longer. I don't
Oh
know.
wow.
But as you know, well, maybe people don't know, but my other passion is design work, specifically cover art, designing album covers. And I've been doing that for maybe 15, 20 years of my life. And I've always been fascinated with, the artwork from the 70s and Storm Thorgerson and Hypnosis and even Roger Dean, right? I met Roger Dean at my school in New York City, School of Visual Arts, maybe about 18 years ago. And he was a
Oh
great
wow.
guy. Yeah. But it all started out with, crazy enough, it started out with artwork, and I was asked to do a cover for Alan Holsworth on one of his last records, and before he passed away, unfortunately. And I was a big fan of Alan Holsworth with his guitar playing and stuff. He's one of my top 10 guys, but so I was kind of excited about that, and I was introduced to the project through Leonardo Pekovic, who runs Moon June Records. Um, so he had asked me to do the artwork, and so I did the artwork. And unfortunately, Alan passed away. And then after that, I had written some songs. I had compiled some original material, and Leonardo had connected. I said I needed somebody to actually produce some of the music and help me, because it was Prague oriented, and I needed
Yeah.
somebody to help me up level it to a degree, right? So he said, "Well, why don't you get Billy?" And I was like, "Okay, Billy Sherwood." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll put you in contact with them." So he did an introductory email, and Billy then reached out to me. We had a conversation, and I sent him some tracks, some demos and stuff, and he was digging it. And then he said, "Yeah, I'd like to work on this with you." At that time, I had some different kinds of material, um, but then it turned out. So I was like, "Okay, great." So I decided to fly out to California and meet Billy. I always feel like meeting people one on one and stuff like that is just more personable and stuff, and
Right.
kind of breaks you out of the whole internet thing, and just stuff like that. But anyway, so yeah, so I went out to California, and we had booked some studio time. And then when we got together, I had brought the track "Reaching for Beyond." So I brought that out all ready to go, just like the framework of it. And I was like, "Okay, so who's coming for drums?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I invited Jay Shellen." I was like, he's slamming. I was like, "Okay, great." So Jay pulls up in a pickup truck, and we introduced each other and stuff like that, and then we had at it. You know, it was a full day session. We jammed live, and there was some pieces of material that kind of came together on those jam sessions. But specifically, we worked on the framework of getting the whole track of Reaching for Beyond done, because it was quite a Herculean feat, so to speak. And then, so after we had that done, then do you want me to tell you the whole story? You want me to? You want to ask me something about this or anything? You want to?
Well, before you continue, I'm curious, how different was the material originally? Because you mentioned a moment ago that some of the material was pretty different from what it is on the album now.
Yeah, it was close and stuff like that. It was still proggy and stuff like that, and long, kind of episodic songs, lengths and stuff like that. So, but it wasn't that different. There were sketches basically. That's how I work. I just do the sketches of the compositions, and then these guys are free to. Actually, I suggest that they paint over the underpainting that I produce and put together, and then they can kind of have carte blanche over what they add. I don't do any dictating or anything. It's about having fun and just gelling with the musicians and making something that sounds good.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach, because depending on the person and the project, they might bring people in and be like, okay, I have this idea, it has to be like this. And on the other end of that, there's, okay, so I have these ideas, but go ahead and add your whole thing into the mix. And they're both pretty, like, it's all about art, like you said, with that painting analogy, and it comes out really well in the music.
Yeah, and I'm always like surprised about like the outcome, right? I mean, Billy's a slamming player. He's got great bass sounds. He's super cool to work with. I enjoy working with him. We have a great time. Jay's super cool. And Patrick is amazing. So yeah, I think Billy really took some of the early tracks and really elevated them. Reaching for Beyond, Onward, Love specifically. And then when these guys were on tour, it was kind of, I just continued to write. And I think I wrote The Event Horizon. And then at that, Billy was on the road with Jay. And then I worked on At the Water's Edge with Patrick Moraz. But I'll get into the story of how Patrick entered the scene.
Okay.
It was pretty, yeah. So, but any questions, just let me know. And
Right. Yeah, Reaching for Beyond, I think the vocals in particular kind of remind me of some of the stuff that Billy has worked on, with Yes and outside of Yes. I was also wondering, before getting back to the story, I want to ask, where are some of your musical influences?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. It ranges. I can talk about it from a vocal standpoint, or vocalist standpoint, or a guitar or composer standpoint. I guess let's talk about. I mean, everybody talks about guitar players, but vocalists are a different thing. I think being able to do the vocals as well is kind of cool. But I'm actually a big Joni Mitchell fan. It's so yeah, I mean, and her guitar playing as well, with her open tunings and stuff like that. So, but just as a vocalist and as a writer, she influenced me a real lot. And, I think, and then you have like the rock guys like Ian Gillan from Deep Purple. I'm a fan of Ian Gillan. Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple as well. Yeah, I mean, people make some comparisons, I guess, to Steve Perry from Journey with my voice and stuff, but I never took any vocal lessons. It started very early in my life, where I was just taking folk guitar. I didn't learn on electric guitar. I had a very crummy acoustic guitar from my sister, and went to Princeton where I was born. I'm from New Jersey, but I went to Princeton to take acoustic guitar lessons and learned, Simon and Garfunkel, right? So I had to do the prerequisite of all the, the folky stuff, and that kind of got me into the Crosby, Stills and Nash, and that got me into kind of Todd Rundgren and stuff like that. I mean, Todd Rundgren's from Philadelphia, and that Philly sound I really like a lot. That soulful Philly sound with the Hall and Oates. Basically, I'm a singer-songwriter. When you strip away the guitar stuff and you strip away, the layering of the vocals and stuff like that, it comes down to just the guitar and me, in the backyard, just strumming around. And that's how a lot of times I just sketch out the tunes just like that, But yeah, vocals, who else do I really like? I don't know. I like a lot of Irish singing. I like a lot of Arabic music. I'm kind of eclectic, right? I don't, if it's what is Thelonious Monk says, if it's good, right? So
Right.
you can tell if something's good, it's, you're gravitated towards it. And I think that, leading into the guitar playing stuff, I mean, I could just tell you some top 5 guys. I mean, it's basically Alan Holdsworth. That's why I did the artwork for Alan Holdsworth, because I was like, oh yeah, this is my chance to shine in some of my design work. And Alan loved it. I did get a chance to talk to Alan about the art. And so he approved it. So I was thrilled about that. More guitar players. I think Jeff Beck is another guy that's just, it's just like off the charts,
Yeah.
He's so simplistic, but yet again, he's unconventional, and that's kind of what I do. That's the approach I kind of take. A lot of stuff that I was influenced on was just basically using the tremolo bar on the guitar, and improvising, and using your ear and kind of going over the tracks. I like to be unorthodox and unconventional when I approach songs. I mean, even Reaching for Beyond, I don't think a lot of people realize this because it has, the Yes vibe going on, but it's actually an Eric Johnson. It's an Eric Johnson arpeggiated kind of decrescendo thing happening, and these comes to, yeah. So it's not really a Yes thing. It's an Eric Johnson kind of thing. If you asked me personally, and Eric Johnson is also another influence on me.
Okay. Yeah, some of the music on this album, which I'll go ahead and share the album cover real quick, and there it is right there. So
Yeah.
when I reviewed this a few weeks back, one of the things I brought up was that some of the music it reminds me of stadium rock type music. So like Journey, like you mentioned earlier, and Styx, that kind of stuff. Like there are bits here and there where it kind of reminds me of that genre, even if it is unintentional.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that song was interesting because when we did the framework in LA for Reaching for Beyond, a lot of times Jay and Billy will throw curveballs. I'm going to talk about Moraz in a little bit, but throwing curveballs at me. But I think you have to be able to be agile and pivot accordingly, because you may have a vision for the track, but then you have to let these guys be the artists that they are as well. I'm not, I do set time areas for Patrick in certain solo sections, and I'm like, here's the chords, I write out the chord charts, and then I do I kind of do the point, the entering point, and then the exit point, and then he knows what to do there. I don't delegate and I don't dictate what kinds of sounds he uses or anything like that. He has free reign, and when I get the stuff back, I'm like, whoa, that's like, I would never think of that. And that's the cool thing about working with these guys at these calibers of musicians and people, is that they always interject stuff that's just like, kind of beyond. So my point being is there's some syncopated stuff in Reaching for Beyond, and it's like, it's kind of like da 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 dun 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 dun, right? Dun 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 dun, right? So there's like that part, and I was like, oh wow, like these guys they threw a curveball at me, and I was like, okay, so what am I going to do with this part? Am I going to play guitar? What am I going to, we're going to break out banjo, right? So I was like, oh, this is a cool opportunity to do kind of that. I don't know. Out of all the Yes albums, I don't know. I'll probably get flack for this, but one of my favorite Yes albums is Drama. That's my favorite. That's my favorite Yes album, and I think that album is just so killer. It's just, and so like I was like, oh yeah, some kind of drama thing, And I remember talking to Billy. I called Billy and I said, I don't know what to do with this, but I'm thinking about doing something vocal over the top of this. And he's like, oh yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, go at it. Let's see what you can do. So, he challenges me, right? So I go and so I just did it, and I was happy with the results. Yeah, if it sounds like Yes, fine. If it doesn't sound like Yes, fine. I'm not trying to emulate anything or anyone. I'm just creating.
Yeah, like as long as the music sounds great and you're happy with the music,
That's it. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, you're showing, there's two covers. So you're showing the second cover. There's Flight, and then this Infinity. This is Infinity.
Right.
And it kind of shows the androgynous Infinity,
Yeah,
so they kind of pair up. Both covers kind of pair up nice on the wall.
Yeah, I have the other one here. Let me just pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is the blue one right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like, the female avatar, and then the other one is I needed a yin and yang, to complement, right? So I kind of did these, and if you notice, what I call the top piece is called the fractal sphere, and she's touching the fractal sphere, and that's basically the knowledge of the universe. It's basically, the Akashic records, not to get too esoteric, but I'm into the codes and the geometry and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, it kind of ties into that, otherworldly aspect that we sometimes get in music and album covers, which I really dig. Yeah. And when it comes to Drama, I know that at the time it came out, it was, everyone loves John Anderson, and how can they not? And here comes a Yes album that doesn't have John Anderson on it for the first time ever. But I've noticed that, it still had its fans, and I feel like even in the past, 20 years, it's become even more of a favorite among Yes fans. I even see people put Drama in their top 5 Yes albums. So you're not alone there in Drama being a favorite. It's excellent. Opening with Machine Messiah just hits the ground running.
Yeah. That's and I'm a Trevor. I'm a Al Di Meola fan. And getting back to the guitar playing thing, I was influenced by Al Di Meola. I met him a couple of times, and he doesn't live too far from me. But Trevor Rabin, right, was influenced by Al Di Meola, and with that kind of flamenco stuff. And I kind of try to interject some of that stuff too. Trevor Rabin is in my top 10. I think he's underrated.
Yeah, we've had him on the show a few times. He's a great guy, and I know people, gave him flack back in the 80s because they weren't as into the 80s Yes, but to be fair, he wasn't trying to be Yes. They were trying to be cinema, and then everyone else was like, oh, let's actually make this Yes, and he wasn't so sure about it. But what was cool was, he talks about how, like, Chris Squire, the story of how Chris let him do his own thing with the old Yes tunes instead of trying to emulate Steve Howe. And I can understand, wanting it to be exactly how you remember it, but I feel like it added a bit more to the era, and like there's more variety when looking back in the history of ES. And I really love a lot of the Rabin stuff.
Yeah, yeah, he had that band in South Africa, I think, and
Yeah, Rabbit.
yeah, and I guess a lot of that cinema stuff, as you were playing that opening track, cinema, one of my favorites. But um, I think it came out of the XYZ stuff, right?
Um, I don't. It might have developed under cinema. I know there were a couple other things that came from XYZ, like Telephone Secrets, a bit of what would end up on Mind Drive, um, and Can You Imagine? Like I know those for sure came from XYZ, but for all we know, there could be other recordings from XYZ that we just don't know about because they haven't surfaced or anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Jimmy Page could have wrote, Owner of a Lonely Heart, like, down, 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 down. I mean, it sounds very Led Zeppelin kind of Jimmy Page. And the precursor to that whole Trevor Rabin thing was, XYZ when they were recording it. Jimmy was recording at Squire's house.
Yeah, I never thought about that comparison because when I was a little kid, like Owner of a Lonely Heart, at that time, it's very different now as I've gotten older. At that time was my favorite Yes song, and then listening to Led Zeppelin came way later for me. But yeah, I'll have to ask Dad about that, what he thinks of that comparison. I'm curious to hear what he thinks. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I like the Chris Squire stuff. Chris Squire's solo record too, "Fish Out of Water," is one of my
yeah,
favorite records. Moraz is on that, but that's one of my favorite records too, and the Story of I as well. I'm into the obscure stuff. The stuff that, I mean, even Zeppelin's catalog. Like, for me, Presence is one of my favorite albums. I mean, everybody, gathers around, Zeppelin 2 or something like that, or stuff. I still listen to Stairway to Heaven to this day, but it's got to be on vinyl. That's the only way I'll listen to it, is on vinyl, because I want to be authentic when I want to kind of go back in time when I listen to that.
Yeah,
But
you want it
Presence,
to feel like the first time as opposed to it's years later and it's been played to death. Like you want it to feel like the first time, I guess.
yeah, and that's the whole cool thing about vinyl resurgence now. And I got some of the vinyl stuff here, but we are putting out the records on vinyl, but it's comes with the lyrics. It's just like the good old days, right?
Yeah.
So these are coming out soon, but these are just prototypes, or that's the back and that's the front, but both covers. But yeah, who else is guitar players? I mean, guitar. Let's see. I don't know. I mean, I listen to stuff that, as long as it's good, I think, as an acoustic guitar player, I think that one guy that's never really brought up and that I'm a big fan of is Michael Hedges.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm familiar. Huh.
Yeah. So he did a lot of the open tuning stuff, and Steve Vai is a big fan of Michael Hedges, and actually said that he was in Steve Vai's eyes, he is the best acoustic guitar player in the world. I would happen to agree with that. I saw him a bunch of times, and I met him before, and he happened to pass away as well. But he was a big Joni Mitchell fan. In fact, he used to take a lot of Joni Mitchell songs and redo them in his own fashion with his own tunings and stuff like that. But we would sit and talk about Joni Mitchell a lot of times.
Okay.
She's completely underrated. I don't know. The stuff that she did with Jaco Pastorius, Hijira, and Don Juan's Reckless Daughter are some of my favorite records of all time.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, if you have the original artwork with Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, you can make the guess, but that's her on the cover. And they changed the cover. They took her off the cover.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So a lot of times she would dress up. She would dress up, kind of doing the Miles Davis thing, the pimp thing, and then go to parties. Okay. And people would be like, "Who's this jive talker?" And then it was literally Joni Mitchell underneath the makeup and the clothing.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So circling back, what was it like working with Patrick Moraz on this album?
It was surreal at first. I mean, I remember working on the song Vitruvian Man with Billy. We did all the rhythm tracks and stuff like that, and I was working on some of the guitar architecture, the overdubs, and doing the vocals and stuff like that. And I was like, Billy, we need somebody to play keyboards. I can't, he's like, dude, don't ask me. I can't do that. He's like way over all of us, and I was like, well, how do we get, and then he was just like, he says, well, why don't we get Patrick? And I said, well, Patrick who? And then he said, Patrick Moraz. And I was like, wait a minute, not that guy, not the guy from Relayer, I was like, no way, So I was just like, I was intimidated, right? So I had the vocal part, that a cappella part that when it drops out in the song, I had that written. I had the classical guitar stuff done. So I just had that moving along. And then I sent that little bit, that little chunk, I sent it over to Patrick. And then the next thing I know, he calls me on the phone and says, I love this, could I put... And then he was playing the harpsichord over the phone to the part that I just wrote. And then, we talked for many hours, actually. He said, what do you think? Can I put harpsichord over this? I said, yeah, you could do whatever you want, Patrick. I don't say anything. This is what you want. This is what you get. So, I think, a lot of people think that, it's like the track is very driving. It's, and then the next thing, it kind of takes the solo and then kind of crashes through in time. That's the way I see it. It's kind of crashes through and you're kind of living in the Vitruvian Man times. And I kind of pay homage to a mentor I had when I was a young kid who was an astronomer. And we both were astronomers. And, I was just a kid. But he was much older than me, but we used to make telescopes and, we were all about stargazing. And I think a lot of people just don't look up, they don't look up into the celestial heavens. And we would see incredible stuff up there if you just look long enough. But so that part is really, I'm paying homage to one of my dear friends that passed away. I think I was 13 years old. And just beginning to learn guitar.
Okay.
So I started when I was 13 years old, playing acoustic guitar for 2 years and then elevated to electric guitar. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, at age 13, that must have been, it's an understatement. Like that was huge. Like that happened, but yeah. And, music helps us to, talk about this stuff and honor people who are gone. And it's probably one of the reasons why sometimes I think music is maybe my favorite art form, because like it feels like the most pure in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely a form of meditation. I see it as meditation. Yeah. It's different than painting. I noticed I did a lot of painting in my life and drawing and stuff, and that's a different. You kind of enter a different thing there, which is fun. That's a different state. The music is another state.
Yeah.
So, but I think who was it that said? I don't know. Was it Frank Zappa or was it one of these guys that said something about like. Music is just the storytelling that we're doing is just a reflection of one's life. and I think in some sense, yes, influenced me in that way, was that the lyrics don't always have to be like a kind of Bob Dylan storytelling way. I think John Anderson had said something that stuck with me one time. It was more about the way that the lyric fits in with the music. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense, but it has to fit rhythmically. And that's an important thing, because songwriting, lyrical writing is something, if you showed somebody on paper the lyrics, they would probably say, well, this is kind of surreal. This is like a Salvador Dali painting. It doesn't really make sense. But sometimes you have to shorten or change a phrase or do this with a lyric just to get it to work with the music. And I thought that's something that I really, that really took home, that really, really had a profound effect on me. Because, I mean, people are like, oh, what are you writing? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, well, listen to it in the context of the music and then tell me what you think. Because it's almost intriguing. It's almost the lyrics become almost a subset of art with the music in its context. And I think that's something that always was alluring about Yes to me, But getting back to Patrick, so we worked on that, and that was a success. And then I don't know what the next song was. I think it was At the Water's Edge, when Yes was on tour. Then I had a classical piece that I put together. It's kind of it's not so classical in the beginning. It has an A, B, and a C section. But in the beginning section, I just crafted out the guitar stuff and played it for Patrick, and then he added to it. And his B section, so maybe it's an A, B, C, D. I think it's an A, B, C, D section. But there's both of us playing together in a duet, and I wanted it that way. And then in the B section, he kind of takes flight and he does his solo thing. And then that kind of settles down, and then I go just solo classical guitar, and then we join together at the end. And I do kind of a 2-part invention on guitar at the end part, and he's playing. And then it kind of dissipates with this kind of watery sound. And that's kind of like, visually speaking, about visual music. It's kind of, at that point, it's kind of, it's like water dissipating, and the song ends. But it's like your life, you're standing at the water's edge, and you're making those critical decisions and contemplating life. I mean, I think that we're all there. But there's something nice, and there's a solitude about it. That's why I put it in the context. That's why I put it in the order of the album. Because if it was at the end of the album, I feel like it would have been like, I don't want to listen to that. It doesn't, it's not rock, or it's not going to do it. But I made the listener stop after Vitruvian, go down, and say, oh, I'm in this place now. And now.
Yeah, it's a nice transition, like going between different moods. Yeah. And I actually got a couple messages from a friend of the show, Jeff Matthews, who has a couple questions about this whole project. So he says, "Congrats, Craig. Luminous Voyage is one of the best albums of the year. So tuneful, complex, and full of energy." And then he asked, "Is Billy playing a Rickenbacker bass on Vitruvian Man? It sounds just like the familiar Rickenbacker growl from many classic Yes albums." So is he playing Rickenbacker? Or?
I don't know, but thank you for those comments. I appreciate that, first of all. And he I don't know, you would have to ask Billy that, but he does have a Rick. I saw them. I'm not sure if they're Chris Squires or not, but they may be, but one of them anyway, the yellow one. But I think he plays Schecter bass.
Okay.
But you're right, that sound is killer. And I actually told him, I said, save that sound. He's like, yeah, it's saved, whatever, because we're going to reuse that sound. I was like, that's the sound, But yeah, I think it's a Schecter bass, but I don't know what processing and stuff that he does with the bass, But it's a
yeah, I guess
Schecter.
that.
Endorsed by Schecter.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'd have to ask him. And Jeff also says, on a similar note, is that a Dan Electro electric sitar on? I'm hearing on Into the Night.
Let me see if I can grab it.
Okay.
It is not a Dan Electro. It is this is actually rare. It's harder to find. This is what I played.
Okay.
So this is actually this is a Travis Bean, I think it is. No, Jerry Jones. Sorry, it's a Jerry Jones. This is a Jerry Jones.
Nice.
Yeah. These were made in Nashville. The white one is very hard to get. I don't know. These go for a couple grand now, maybe $3,000 or something. But at the time, they were pretty reasonable. But and it's got the sympathetic strings on here. A lot of times, I open tune these to sitar tunings, but I'm using this on that. Yeah, on Into the Night, and that part is in 11/8. That little section there. It's an odd meter thing going on. Odd timing. What else? These were made in Nashville, but Jerry Jones went out of business, and now Dan Electro makes the same model. Yeah.
All right, and Jeff also asked something else.
Yeah, good call on that one. Good ears on that one, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and he asks something that I was also about to ask, which is, what is the name or meaning behind XOXZeno? Like, how did that name come about? Like, what's the origin?
Well, I mean, I'm into the, esoteric stuff. That's all I can say. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think if you could dissect it and kind of throw some ideas at me, I can tell you if you're on the right path or not. But it's just something that I kind of want to keep a mystery to a degree, but you can figure it out, but it's like a code, one thing sticks into the next thing and then into the next thing. That's what I can tell you. But
okay.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
it relates to the artwork, right? And it relates to the artwork and it relates to the music. So there's a couple of clues.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm on the right path, but when I hear it, well, there's a couple things. So the letters, the syllables sound great together because, you have some of the same sounds in there. Like, it almost feels like a palindrome, but it's not a palindrome because it's not exactly the same forward and backward, but has a great cadence to it. And also makes me think of like space and extraterrestrial life, but again, I don't know if that's part of it. But yeah, I think it's a cool name to have for this whole thing.
I mean, Patrick Moraz's cousin discovered the first exoplanet.
Oh,
so I can just give you that. That's all
okay.
I have to say about that. And when we talked on the phone, it was very clear that we both knew we were aligned because he knew exactly what was going on, and I knew that he knew what I was doing. So we were, kind of like, just fit together like that. It was just, things align sometimes in life, and you go with it, right? You just go with it.
Yeah. And I mean, the Xeno part, that kind of cued me in as well, because, I know that the Alien franchise is not the only thing where that etymology comes from, but, how it relates to alien life. But yeah, that's kind of another clue in there that I noticed. But yeah, and I was gonna say that if you ever, I don't know if you're gonna like make another album under this name, but a little while ago I thought of a silly joke. It was if you pretend that the band XOXZeno broke up or whatever, you could then make an album under XOXZeno. Just add more to it,
Yeah, that's called really milking it there, Stephen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like that's if I run out of ideas, I'll call you up and we can talk about that. But
Okay.
that's a good suggestion. But no, I mean, I guess working with these guys. I mean, I think Keith Emerson said it the best, where about Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He had said, and I don't know, I was just a kid and I had one of these BBC, very rare Emerson, Lake and Palmer videos about them touring. And it shows Keith Emerson in his backyard. I don't know if you ever saw these things, but these things were very difficult to find if you were a prog head back in the 70s or in the 80s. Now, meanwhile, paint the picture in the 80s. In the 80s, I was a Yes guy, right? And people were Metallica was coming into the scene. And everybody was like Metallica, and then Def Leppard, like this is what ruled, right? And Iron Maiden. But I was like, so we played all over New Jersey. We played over New York City. I played Staten Island, Long Island, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, played all these places. Even had many conversations with Dream Theater and stuff because they were playing the circuit as well at that time. But it was interesting. Like everybody was like, "Oh, Craig, what are you playing? How come you're not playing with distortion or you're not playing with this or that?" I said, "No, man. I'm just true to my roots. I would rather listen to Steve Howe or listen to something that was syncopated and challenging and adventurous, right? That's the thing. The Yes Music, the Gentle Giant, all these groups, Gong, all these groups that I used to listen to, they all took me somewheres. And I think that's kind of what I'm injecting in this music, XOXZeno, is I'm taking you on a voyage. And it's a luminous voyage. So I'm not trying to, the thing is, we have so much, it's not necessarily a happy planet we're living on. Right. Hence into the night, right? It's kind of where that track came from. It's kind of not, it's not the greatest place to, be, la, 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 it's not the 60s. And I wish it was, because I'd be right there. Right. But it's not, it's that kind of music that took me somewhere. It's adventurous music. And I think that's what I was into. Everybody, and, it became so corporate and it just, little by little, including the artwork, right? Everything went away. The artwork then went this big on a digital download that wasn't even compressed to 130 or 120. And it sounded like, shit. And you couldn't see the artwork, right? So it's a great time because now you can print stuff, you can make big 12 by 12 album artworks again and do your artwork, which connects them to the music. I mean, that's hence the Roger Dean, even the Gentle Giant album that I had when I was a kid. I think it came out with a mask, right? I told Derek Shulman this. It came out. I put the mask on and I walked around with this little gnome face around my house, and scared my mother and what have you. My father told me to get out of the house and take that mask with you now.
Right. So what's next on your music journey? Do you have like anything else in the works, or is it basically just staying in the moment for now, focusing on, spreading the word of this particular album?
Yeah, I mean, we're, marketing the record, right? Got Glass Onion on that and stuff, um, and we're getting quite a bit of radio airplay, which is good, around the
Awesome.
planet, a lot, and appreciate being on the show here as well. But I mean, that's what I love about Prague. Not to deviate, but really quickly, but Prague is a different thing than rock music, right? In the categorization section, I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of, and I never finished my statement with Keith Emerson, but what I loved about that movie, this little documentary that Emerson Lake and Palmer did, was Keith Emerson was shooting these arrows in the back of his house, and he said something about like, I like to push the group as far as we could take it. And he says, of course I could write a 12-bar blues, but is that pushing these guys musically? And I said, that's it. I mean, you may think the music could be more complex. You may think it could be longer. You may think just to do the album with these guys and pull it off. I know it took time, but that was part of the educational standing of it. There's more elements to the Luminous Voyage. We had a hard time mixing. It was a complicated mix for these tracks because some of these songs are 5 or 6 songs in one song. So, it's challenging, but I just wanted to say that about Keith Emerson. So, I mean, I took that approach, to XOXZeno, and it was kind of like, yeah, when I'm doing the compositions, I'm totally open to the guys' suggestions. I pivot the way I have to and make it work because they're going to have their input. I don't want to be standing in the creative way. I want everybody to have their creative flow going. But I like to push it a little bit,
Yeah.
because I think even Vitruvian Man, or I don't know, some of these other tracks or whatever, but I mean, you could tell Billy's having a good time. You could tell. He's in his element, he's playing, and he's enjoying himself, and so is Jay, and so is Patrick. Some stuff might be simple for them, some stuff might be, but it's adding to the context of the music. I don't do solos. I just don't, there's a lot of shredders out there and they just shred. Well, if you want to shred, I could do a fusion group too, which I may do at some point, where it's just improv and we just shred. I mean, that's what I'm all about. I'm about playing guitar for shredding stuff for 3-4 hours straight. I can just go at it, and we can go down different avenues. But this has to be in the context of a story. It's an album. We're making a full story here, and it's the first record. And to answer your question, Stephen, I've talked to Billy and I talked to Patrick about. So we I have a new track that I worked on, and it will. So right now we're just marketing this record, trying to get it out, trying to get airplay, just trying to saturate the waves a little bit and get people, accustomed to absorbing XOXZeno a little bit, because it does have a crossover. It's not just prog and, it's proggy, like you said, but it has pop elements too, like rock elements where the chorus has that high impact point. And, people can relate. The society is somewhat, ignorant when it comes to, progressive rock and progressive music, jazz, classical. They like things spoon-fed in very simplistic forms, and I'm doing the Keith Emerson thing, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm hence reaching for beyond. That's where the title came from. We're reaching musically beyond, not just, also spiritually as well, holistically, right?
Right.
As humans, right? Collectively.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So before we close out, just real quick, gotta do the Craig Maher fun fact segment. So outside of music, what do you enjoy doing? Whether it be for fun, just anything outside of music.
I like preparing meals. I like cooking and eating very healthy. So I think that's a creative process. I kind of relate that to making songs. You know, it's like, okay, ooh, let's add this spice, or let's add some curry into this dish, and let's do this, and let's see how it turns out. It's the same with songwriting, the same with music. You know, so I like to cook. I like to bike ride. I like to do cycling, stay fitness, and go to the gym and stuff. You know, I like teas. I like to drink a lot of tea. You know, I'm a tea connoisseur. I have teas from all over the world, different kinds of teas. And moringa is my new tea, so be on the lookout. Try that. It's very good for you. Moringa. It's the miracle tree.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for joining me again, Craig Maher, for this episode. And people, you can find XOXZeno. Type the project name in the URL. Don't forget the dashes. So exo-X-xeno.com, and you can find the album there and check it out if you haven't already, and spread the word. And thanks for tuning in to Yesshift, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you, Stephen. I had a great